evening. You're tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. PM insists he still has majority support and promises vote of confidence in September. Till then, what can we expect? That's coming up. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said he still had the majority support of lawmakers and will prove his legitimacy by a vote of confidence in Parliament in September.
Muhyiddin made the announcement this afternoon after his weekly audience with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, where he informed His Majesty that he received a number of declarations that convinced him he still had majority support.
Bahawa saya telah menerima sejumlah surat akuan daripada ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat yang meyakinkan saya bahawa saya masih mempunyai kepercayaan majoriti ahli Dewan Rakyat pada masa ini. Sehubungan itu, peletakan jawatan saya di bawah perkara 434 Perlembagaan Persekutuan adalah tidak berbangkit.
Muhyiddin, however, said he is aware that his position as Prime Minister has been questioned many times. As such, he presented to the King that he will determine his legitimacy in the Dewan Rakyat next month. The Prime Minister said that his proposal had received the approval from His Majesty.
Meanwhile, the leaders of opposition parties urged the Prime Minister to hold a special parliamentary meeting no later than August 9 so that the motion of confidence can be tabled and debated.
In a joint statement, they said that the special sitting should be held based on Standing Order 11.3. They added that it is impossible for Muhyiddin to still command the support of majority of MPs after yesterday's announcement that a number of government MPs have withdrawn their support. The statement was signed off by PKR President Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim and leaders from DAP, Amanah, Warisan, Pejuang, APCO, Muda and 2 other lawmakers.
The Prime Minister also revealed that some quarters are unhappy with him. This because he refused to accede to their demands, including intervening in court matters to acquit those prosecuted for criminal offences.
Muhyiddin said because of that, there were certain parties who were deliberately trying to cause political turmoil.
Saya tahu bahawa mereka kurang senang dengan ketegasan saya untuk tidak melayan beberapa tuntutan mereka. Termasuklah desakan supaya saya mencampuri urusan mahkamah untuk membebaskan beberapa individu yang sedang didakwa atas kesalahan jenayah.
A lot of things could happen between now and September. What can we foresee happening leading up to the much-anticipated vote of confidence? Political analyst Dr. O.A. Sun shares his insights.
This is yet another attempt by PM Muhyiddin Yassin to try to, shall we say, delay the inevitable. That is to face the motion or vote of no confidence. We hope that indeed by the end of, let's say, September, such a motion would indeed be introduced because the past record of this administration, frankly speaking, is not promising in terms of really facing motions of confidence. And meanwhile, of course, he could do a lot of maneuvering to win more support in order for him to pass the motion of confidence. I think what happened over the last few days would indicate amply to both the general public and perhaps even to the King that Muhyiddin has either lost his parliamentary majority or is about to lose it. So I think somehow a compromise is reached whereby Muhyiddin promised to introduce a motion of confidence in the next parliamentary sitting. Now, there are a lot of uncertainties, of course. For example, the mounting pandemic numbers would make the next parliamentary sitting questionable. And if there's no such parliamentary sitting and there was no provision for a hybrid parliamentary sitting, well, would such a motion ever be introduced? And if such a motion is not introduced, would Muhyiddin be able to carry on as the Prime Minister?
Ahsan also weighs in on the apparent division in UMNO among those within the government and those outside of the government.
Well, the moment Ismail Sabri decided to become Muhyiddin's deputy prime minister, in a sense, he has affiliated himself with the Muhyiddin's camp and therefore in opposition to the mainstream leadership of his own party, namely UMNO. Within UMNO, I think there's a groundswell of support from the grassroots, from the Supreme Council and so on, for the decision to withdraw support from Muhyiddin and the government of the day. And Ismail Sabri, together with some of his cabinet colleagues from UMNO, are going against this party decision. And therefore, I think in the number one, in future general elections, for example, whether they would still become UMNO's candidates, I think that is up in the air. And if not, well, how would they win back their seats, assuming that a lot of those parliamentary seats were traditionally strong UMNO seats? UMNO would have to indeed consolidate the support for its leadership's decision to withdraw support from Muhyiddin as well as Muhyiddin's government. Of course, over the next few weeks, you would see a lot of UMNO members of parliament be strongly persuaded or induced to continue their support for Muhyiddin as well as for his government. So whether they are up to resisting such temptations or pressure, I think would be a test of their political survivability in the future. Because if you look at the political landscape of the country at the moment, UMNO obviously enjoys more political support from the voters, much more than certainly Bersatu. And if these MPs from UMNO were to switch their allegiance in a sense to Bersatu, then they have to face the political consequences.
Questions over PN's parliamentary majority will only be answered through a vote of confidence when the House sits next month. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about the government's contested legitimacy. That's coming up after AWANI Tonight. We'll take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A recent survey by market analyst Ipsos found that more than half of Malaysians feel that the country is in a decline. The study also found that 70% believe politicians do not care about the people. We speak to Ipsos Managing Director Arun Menon to make sense of the data.
The study showed that COVID-19 pandemic has taken a toll on countries across the world, and the result is a feeling of decline. A sentiment also shared by 55% of Malaysians surveyed.
And specifically, when the pandemic cases increases and we struggle to adapt to that situation, you always see that people think countries are going on the wrong direction in itself, right? And that's also linked to this, whether the country is on decline. They also believe the system is somehow rigged against them, as in the sense that they're not able to succeed, they're not able to advance themselves, and like a lot of Malaysians feel that. And we can clearly associate during the pandemic, most of the vulnerable segments are coming from the B40s and M40s and stuff.
The pandemic, he said, has magnified the division in society between elites and regular people, and that there is a sense that the economic, political and intellectual elites have failed to understand the plight of average people.
Also, the main thing which concerns, I believe, is that the people in power or in politics doesn't care about the concerns of the people on the ground. So there is one part is that system is against them. And the second thing is that this, people who can actually make a difference does not seems to be care about the people on the ground, right? So these are the two angles. We've been tracking the survey for quite some period. So we have the results from 2019. It was just before the pandemic, right? So the scores are high, but we see around 20%, 18 to 20% drop, increase in terms of people thinking that, system is against them or politicians doesn't care of them, right? So that means that at least 20% more people who actually currently thinks that, they cannot succeed in the current system and they are not getting enough support.
The survey conducted among 500 Malaysians also reported that 80% think strong leadership is required to take the country back from the rich and powerful.
We did ask a question, by a strong leader, do you mean somebody who are willing to break the rules, right? So Malaysian doesn't agree for that. So they don't agree that it should be someone who actually break the rules in a way. They want somebody who is in the system who can actually make a difference for them. So they are not thinking for a change into the system, but who is part of the institution itself. But they want someone who can actually take back and care for the people in itself, right?
On the international front, Thailand's COVID-19 cases hit another record high today. The kingdom reported over 20,000 new infections in the general population, with 187 among prison inmates. Meanwhile, 188 fatalities were recorded in the past 24 hours, also a record high.
The government has already tightened containment measures, with the rules likely to remain in place until the end of August. Thailand's COVID task force earlier said that the number of infections in the provinces is now higher than in Bangkok. Last month, the government called on people to follow restrictions, warning without cooperation, daily cases could reach 30,000 under a worst-case scenario.
In other news, China reported 71 domestic COVID-19 infections today, the highest since January. The country is battling its largest outbreak in months, driven by the Delta variant. Authorities imposed lockdowns in cities and started tightening overseas travel restrictions to contain the outbreak.
Nearly 500 domestic cases have been reported since mid-July, when a cluster among airport cleaners in Nanjing was found. Nanjing has so far tested its 9.2 million residents 3 times after shutting down gyms and cinemas and closing off residential areas. Meanwhile, a vaccination campaign targeting students aged 12 to 17 is being expanded in China to try and combat the spread of the Delta variant. It is unclear how many in China are fully vaccinated, although authorities say more than 1.6 billion doses have been administered so far.
Australia reported one of its youngest deaths from COVID-19 today. The man in his 20s, who had no underlying health issues and was unvaccinated, died at his home in Sydney. Authorities said he was 13 days into home isolation when his health worsened rapidly after earlier complaining of just mild symptoms. He lived with one person who had been hospitalized with the virus. His death highlighted the risk from the virus and the importance of getting vaccinated. Yesterday, New South Wales government said it targets to inoculate half of Sydney's population, or 6 million people, before lifting the city's lockdown scheduled to end on August 28.
Can we urge people to please heed?
Thousands of residents living near a forest area north of Athens fled their homes as a wildfire reached residential areas. Greece is grappling with its worst heat wave in decades as deadly wildfires sweep across the region, with Turkey battling fires since last week.
The blaze sent a huge cloud of smoke over Athens and prompted multiple evacuations near the town of Tatoi, about 20 kilometers to the north. Residents were seen leaving their homes in cars and on motorcycles in a blanket of smoke. Authorities say it will take a lot of work to tame the fire, as the dense forest is very dried out due to the heat wave. Temperatures reached 42 degrees Celsius in parts of Athens. Authorities described the heat wave as the worst in Greece since 1987.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Saraya Mia. We'll see you again.
Let the world know you